everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're so grateful that you could join us here. You know that here at Mazuma, we are all about saving you time, money, and stress on your taxes, but we also have someone here to talk with us about something else that's so important for your businesses and building business success. So we're so grateful that Derek was able to join us. He's the founder of Analytics Odyssey, and for over a decade, he has been helping businesses know and understand their data, and he also has a master's from the University of Utah. So we're so grateful that he could come and help discuss this topic for us and more about how you can use and understand your data. Now, we're going to go ahead and go through the webinar, but throughout, make sure there should be a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that, enter in your questions. We'll be taking questions throughout, so feel free to add them in there, and we're so excited to hear from you. But with that, we're going to go ahead and turn time over to Derek. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Danielle. And it's good to be here. Now at Analytics Odyssey, our motto is data you can do. And that's my objective today. So by the time we're done, I want you guys to feel like you can walk away with actionable things that you can do to kind of help your business accelerate in how it's using data. Danielle did a great job introducing to me. A few kind of bullet points. I've got a timeline on my left. I'm all data, all numbers, all math. That's been what I like and I've been growing up to do, and now I do it. So I've gotten my master's in statistics at the University of Utah in 2010 and a bachelor's in actuarial science. I have been on that track ever since and love what I do. I want to take a minute and let's get a poll going, or a little bit of activity. I want to understand from the audience where it is you think you are in using data for your business to make decisions. So I'm going to open up a poll here. Let's see here. How would you rate your current data strategy? If you guys want to take a minute and jump into the poll section, we have optimized, integrated, standardized, repeatable, or chaotic. I'll give you, 10 more seconds to add your answer. We've got 9 of 17 answered, 10 of 17. Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. 1 out of 10 would say you're optimized. Another 1 out of 10 integrated. Another 1 out of 10 standardized, repeatable. And then the most, and I think people are a little bit more self-critical and have labeled themselves into the chaotic. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know where to go, and it's getting crazy up in here. So let me give you a little bit of overview of where we're headed today, right? I want to start out by defining what data is, give you a little bit of expectation of what we're talking about. I want to show you a little bit of value with that data. I want to give you a clear roadmap of how you can do data too. I want to discuss roadblocks that you're going to run into, and I am going to give us some Q&A and some thoughts and practical examples of what's been done. What is data? That's the first question. And over the next 5 slides, I'll just show you a couple of dashboards of how people are using data. And I want you to put your hat on of this is your data. Now this is someone's data, but if it's yours, then let's talk about how this is your data. You have sales, and every day you want to know how many sales you have. You sell an item, so you want to know how much of that item that you've sold and how much it's going to cost you to fulfill it. You have costs, you have profit. Over time, you might want to know your customers and how much they're contributing to your product or your business. And you might have cohorts of those customers that sign up in different periods of time that are taking advantage of newer products. And you want to see if those customers might have a better return on investment, let's say, than previous customers. You might be monitoring your sales and looking in a detailed level of all things about those sales that are happening on a day-to-day basis. And you might be tracking your analytics of who's visiting your website, and you might have a website. Now, as we go and we talk about all those things that you saw, all those numbers, all those lines, everything there, there's really two building blocks to really what data is, and they're summarized in these two definitions: a metric and a dimension. So a metric is a number that holds value, something that you can count, anything with a dollar amount, anytime you're counting a person. Dimension is something that describes. I like to think in terms of English, it's a noun, it's a person, place, or thing. When we're looking at metrics, those are the numbers that we're seeing on top of dashboards. Those are that line chart, a metric over time. And when we're looking at dimensions, those are the describers. So here on the right, I have product type as a dimension. And you'll notice that for each product type, there's one row that shows the metric of total customers in this case, or product quantity, I'm sorry. Any questions on that? Okay. The last building block that I want to discuss is granularity. Now, we discussed a dimension and it being a person, place, or thing, but the collection of dimensions is what represents a granularity. Let me give a couple of examples in case that's a little unclear. We're starting to get into an abstract area. One row per state is a granularity. Now, if that state, if you have lots of customers that have made orders within that state, if you combine the state with the customer, you have another level of granularity. If that customer has made multiple orders, then that customer and its multiple orders is another level of granularity. And the important thing to remember about granularity is really it's just the combination of a bunch of dimensions shoved into one single table. If you think of like an Excel report, granularity would be the number of rows on that report and the distinct way of those in which those rows are made up. Here we have the granularity of the state, and we have two metrics for that granularity. Now, we've got some building blocks, still quite, we've got to put them together, right? Like what, if we're going to do data and we have dimensions and we have metrics and we have granularity, like what does that mean? Where do we go from here? So I want to first discuss how data is organized and give you a visual of a tree. And I want you to think of that tree as starting out from nothing, and it needs to grow. And that's really a lot of what your data is inside of your business, is you start your business and you start with nothing. And as your business grows, your data grows. In fact, your data is just you in digital form. And as that growth in data kind of grows out, it's nothing that you can see. It's nothing that holds value. It all sits underneath the level of your business. And it's not until you start to collect that data and look at it and make understanding of it and ask it questions that you really start to get the fruits of that labor. It's really where you start to see the value that your data has. And that's when it starts to surface and where it finds meaning for you. There's three main phases that data will go through to get that value that you're looking for. And those three phases are warehousing, transformation, and visualization. And when we look at the organization of data, this transformation, visualization, warehousing, you will go through those phases for each specific area of your business. So if you have customers, then the data that's collected around your customers is its own little living and breathing entity and operates independent of the data that's collected around your products. And those things are meant to live independent and operate independently. And it's not until a customer purchases a product that you have the joining of a customer and a product, and you have a new problem, and that's the organization of all of these different data components, all of these different routes, and collecting it into a single tree or one intelligent system. Right down here in my second bullet point, I have the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And as you look to utilize data, that is a very important understanding as you accelerate forward. And let me give you an example. If you build Excel reports and you're building Excel reports every month and you're refreshing that with new data every month, and you've now hired a full-time person to manage that monthly update. And if something breaks, you delete that report and you go to something new. And now your organization, as it grows, it has 5 different people operating with their own version of a report. That is the parts of your data operating. That's the person operating with their own understanding of what their data is and what's available to them. And what happens is we get a disconnect. We get people operating with their own understanding of what the data is. And sometimes those flavors are different, and sometimes they're flat out wrong. And as your organization continues to evolve forward, you'll find that that becomes the #1 holdup in the way in which you guys are able to be efficient and to scale, is that your reporting starts to really bog you down in your ability to execute day in and day out. So we've got these trees, we've got this understanding we need a whole tree, we need to get everything all into one place, we have transformation, we have visualization. And the craze that's happening in this current time is that the term warehousing, and it's been around for a while, the idea that you can dump your data into an area where it's meant for everyone to consume is starting to take off, and has never been easier for companies to adopt. It's as simple as putting your data, uploading your data set, your Excel spreadsheet, in a location that other people can access it as well. And a warehouse gives you the opportunity to automate the way in which data becomes updated, and gives you additional tools to transform that data into those granularities that we discussed, and to build something that's more intelligent and more robust for your organization than just a few reports that are static that need to be updated every once in a while. When we look at this tree that we've built, now remember, we had multiple little trees, each one with their own independent operating system for the data that it was collected. But when we get into this warehouse, when we have all the data into one single place, we're able to connect the data in a way that we've never been able to before. And we're able to draw insight from that data in a way that we've never been able to before. Think of marketing campaigns. There are so many different ways that you can run a marketing campaign, but the difficulty becomes in measuring the impact of that campaign. When you put $10,000 on the line in hopes to gain a customer, what is the cost of getting that customer, and how do you measure that cost? That's a challenging question to answer if you've got your marketing information in a different system and that's disconnected than your sales system. And without that overlap, you're running around blind. You're not able to make data-driven decisions, and you're going with gut feel, and you're going to get your hand burned a few times. As we approach this centralized strategy, it's important to think of the differing systems that you have where that data exists, and think of the way in which the interaction plays between that data. If I have a campaign, what is the interaction between a campaign and a customer? How do those two systems represent that same data point, and how do we overlay them in front of each other and transform it so that we can see them side by side? This is a term that's pretty well defined. in the data space. It's called analytical maturity. Now, if half those are on the phone have kind of given themselves a 1 on their strategy and they feel like their data is a mess, things are chaotic, then this might be the first time you're seeing the notion of analytical maturity. And for you, I say that today is your maturation day, right? I have a 10-year-old daughter. We're about to go into maturation. I don't know what we're in for, but I can tell you on the data side that there is a tried and true roadmap that all businesses will have to go through when they embark on finding value from their data. And this is it. It's the analytical maturity pyramid, and everybody starts at the very bottom. And not everybody makes it to the top. And without a clear roadmap on how to get there, it could take years or decades to finally mature your analytical strategy to where you feel like you are with your competitors and above them and being able to use data at your competitive advantage. The 4 main phases are descriptive data, discovery, predictions, and decisions. And as we learn about these phases and what each one of them is, you'll be able to attack it, realize that it's not the end, and move forward to the next phase so that you can take maximum advantage of the value that your data has. The descriptive phase is what happened. The discovery phase, why it happened. The prediction phase, what will happen. And the decision phase, how can we make it happen? Now, buying off on this maturity life cycle, and I'll walk you through these phases. Let's establish an objective of what we want to do, and then we can kind of step through each one of these and attack it. So we want to define core metrics and dimensions that our business operates under. We want to get all of the data into one place. We want to build the intelligence from that data, make an outcome prediction, and then based off of that prediction, act. Put yourself in the shoes of a commerce company, either brick or mortar or e-commerce, someone who is selling an item. In this case, we have a customer that sells t-shirts. If we were to live in the descriptive phase and lay out what it is that we can find value with their data, here are some examples of how I would lay it out. First, they have metrics and they have dimensions. Their metrics are total sales, number of customers, order quantity, inventory level, lifetime value, average order value, cost per acquisition. Their dimensions: time, products, customers, campaigns, orders. Now, when I say a dimension, I want you to think of 1 row per. Now, I'll read it back again so that you can kind of see in your mind how the data will look. And then as we actually look at the data, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's a dimension. So products, 1 row per product. If I were to show you the data, you would see 20 rows, and that would be 20 different products. Customers, if I were to show you that data and you saw 1,000 rows, that would be 1,000 customers. Each row would be the individual information for a customer. If I showed you campaigns, that would be 1 row per campaign, and everything on that row would represent the information about a campaign. So here is a table called orders. It's simple, 1 row per order. Now there's multiple differing dimensions on this table, but the granularity is the order. And what I can do with this granularity is I can build all of the intelligence I need around orders.
You've just dropped into a descriptive dashboard. It shows your sales, and it is descriptive because it doesn't really give you any notion of what you can do to change it. It just gives you numbers. This is a daily snapshot of what the orders look like. And we want to get past this phase. This is a phase that's easily stuck inside because honestly, there's just a lot to describe. If you think of all the data that you have and all the different ways that you can describe it. And if you put someone at the head of understanding your data and they don't understand data, then they themselves will just ask questions for years, right? Oh, how many sales did we get today? What's our lifetime value this month? These are just questions that come with a one-off report, no idea on what actions can be taken to move the needle on those numbers. And that's why we call it a descriptive layer of analytics. Now, if we want to traverse the maturity life cycle, we need to take one step further, and that's the discovery phase. We've described our data. Now we want to know, okay, that's what happened. Why did it happen? And when we start to ask this, why did it happen? The building blocks in how we've approached using data start to break down really quickly without a sound architecture in place. And let me give you a few examples of that. Suppose you want to look at your total sales over time. So you're looking at a report that shows every month how many sales you have. And you say, that's nice. How many of those sales happen in the state of Utah? If you haven't put your data together right, then you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't have a report that shows sales over time by state or sales over time by product. There's additional dimensions that you want to dive deeper into. And this is where that granularity becomes really important. Without super granular, very detailed, very specific data points, you lack granularity to know why things are happening the way they are. And you have a disconnect on the outcomes that are being seen and the drivers that you can push within your business to make those outcomes or to change those outcomes. When I start to help businesses get into the discovery phase, the first thing that I'll bridge into is setting up filters on dashboards that they're already familiar with. And that gives them the ability to discover or ask the questions on the dashboard without having to develop something completely new. When we're in this discovery phase, the single most important dimension you can remember is time. Time is the universal bound by every system and every data point that will always cross and always connect. You have the opportunity to look at every metric across your organization, get it to one row per day, and now you can measure daily performance regardless of the system of where that data is being collected. If you have your standalone reports that aren't connected, those metrics no longer matter to your business. You're not able to make decisions while including those metrics in your decision process because those metrics are out of date. You're going to have someone refresh it and continually refresh it. And you'll find that that takes longer than what you're willing to wait, and that your gut feel has a better intuition than waiting around to find some golden nugget and have a delayed process if that golden nugget doesn't come true. I have a live dashboard I wanted to show you real quick. And this is measuring the site performance by product for a website that's selling on an e-commerce platform. And what you'll see is what we've already talked about, right? There are metrics across the top that help to measure and quantify the performance of the business. And at each phase, we have dimensions with those metrics. So I have a campaign dimension, one row per campaign, and every metric for that campaign across as a column. If I go further, I have the source, one row per source, and every metric across. Landing page, landing path, their medium. So notice this discussion of dimensions and how a medium is just a dimension. And by saying, this is my dimension, and here are all of my metrics, it becomes a little bit more easy to just put together a report around your dimension and the metrics that are important to that dimension. Now, when we're in this discovery phase, notice that every dimension that I've been scrolling through has a corresponding filter along the top. So here's the product. And up here, I can find the product. Oh, right here. So I can filter on a specific product. Now, sit with me, if you will. If I filter this dashboard by a specific product, what am I going to get? Well, I'm going to get all of my metrics for that specific product. I'm going to get the campaigns that have impacted that specific product. I'm going to get the source for that specific product and the landing pages for that product. What I'm getting is a much more granular, much more detailed view of the product and its performance when I drill into that product. And that is the discovery phase. I'm asking questions of my data and it's spitting back answers to me. We've now traversed, we've matured into the discovery phase just by expounding out our granularity and adding filters along the top. And that's true. That's not a opinion. That's the phase that data engineers, business intelligence developers, anyone that gets hired into a business to do data, that's what they'll first start with is, can I filter on these dashboards? And are these dashboards regularly being updated? Those are the first two things that people will have to attack when they want to get to the discovery phase. And I've shown, this descriptive phase and this discovery phase, and I hope you've got like your backpack, you're ready, you're like, yes, I want to get to the top of this pyramid. And I want you to understand that most companies will never get there. It's such a vicious cycle between the descriptive and the discovery phase of what happened and why did it happen, and asking a question and getting an answer, asking a question, getting an answer, asking a different question, getting a different answer. That if you lack a strategy of how to get to predictive analytics or to machine learning or prescriptive analytics, if you don't know that strategy, then you will likely just be asking questions of your data and expecting it to speak back to you for the rest of your business life. The last point I want to speak to on this is consider the lowest level of granularity. When you get into your reporting phase and looking at your data, consider how much further down the rabbit hole can I go with what I'm seeing. And if the answer is I can't, what I see is what I get, then that's where you need to start. You need to start breaking it out into something more granular while still maintaining a high level 10,000 foot view. So look at the right side image for a minute, and I'm going to go over it. This is someone trying to talk about the cost for items and it being misreported. And the brevity of that is quite significant. When I was a kid, my parents called it a trust bucket. And you didn't want to kick over the trust bucket because then you would empty it. And that's the same with data. This has happened many times in my career. One specific, I remember flying to San Francisco to apologize to an event manager because we had over-reported how much revenue they were going to make from contracts by $2 million. It was just a mistake in the code, and it was wrong. And they had made some decisions off of that data on how much they were going to invest in the event. And when they discovered that it was not accurate, that the data was wrong, they lacked the trust from that point forward to take action on the data that they had without having a long, drawn-out validation process that can be avoided and should be avoided, and at all costs, of not kicking over your trust bucket, always validating your numbers. And that is a key challenge that businesses will run up against as they look to describe and discover actionable insights within their data. Another challenge that they run into is the speed at which they're able to run through the question and answer phase. Companies that have ignored the problem for so long have massive amounts of data, and the data is dirty. It's not clean. What I mean by that is maybe a customer has put in their address and they've put it in 3 different times, and it's 3 different versions. And there's really no right way to get at what state the customer is at. And when the question comes up of how many customers per state are ordering, that question is so complex to solve that it takes a really long time to solve and is no longer relevant to the person who asked it, which is often an executive or a decision maker. And they become frustrated at that speed of questions and answers, that there becomes a throw everything away, migrate to something new, and how much money is it going to cost type scenario, because of this lack of understanding on granularity and architecture, and those questions are just taking too long. Another common challenge that I see is the wrong drivers. And we haven't really talked about this till now, but when we're looking at a metric, that metric can have 2 different impacts. One, it could be an indicator that's telling me of, is my business doing well or not well? And then it could be, or it could be a driver. And a driver is the thing that you can do about, or the button that you can push that should impact your indicator. And as you break your metrics into drivers and indicators, you're able to start to make predictions on your drivers. And let me give you an example of a driver. Marketing cost. How much money are you willing to spend on a marketing campaign? That is a driver, a lever, if you will, that you can throttle forward and backwards based off of what your data is telling you. Now, that in and of itself won't tell you if your business is succeeding or not. It's just a driver, but it is a lever that you should invest in knowing how to push forward and pull back on. And you should directly see that in a profit metric or total sales or conversion. Those are all things that should perform better once you've played with your driver lever. I often see inside of organizations, they don't understand what a driver is, and they're looking at metrics, but they don't have any clear idea on what they can do to change what it is they're seeing in front of them. And finally, the top bullet, I didn't discuss it till now, but data is static. That's one of the key challenges that I see when I come into an organization, is that there is no way for the data to get refreshed. And so whatever it is that's being done today will have to be redone tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it becomes such a redundant process that the value to effort pendulum is just not in balance. And it doesn't make sense for organizations to continue investing in data if all it's going to be is static one-offs. So now there's 2 more phases. We've discussed this bare bones descriptive phase where it's reports, it's just understanding what your data is. We've discussed a discovery phase where you can look at those numbers and ask questions. And now we're to the value phases, the prediction and the decision phase. And there's a lot of gray area of these phases and what it means for you and how to make it valuable. So I've got some bullet points and I want to discuss these, but keep in mind that this is where the hype is right now. This is where you're hearing all of the success stories of people who've used data to their maximum potential. This is the term machine learning. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up and discuss it. So the first thing to do is focus on drivers that you can control. Think of that cost per marketing campaign again, and it as something you can control. Now, if we were to predict that cost, or how about this? Let me say this. If we were to predict the sales and we knew the cause and effect of our sales as it relates to the driver of our marketing spend, then we're ripe for a prediction phase that we can look forward a little bit and make a determination and then move the lever, and then look forward a little bit more and move the lever. And that's really the prediction phase that we get into. We have a very solid understanding of our descriptive statistics. We know the metrics that we want to predict, and we know that those metrics, we can do something about the prediction once we see it. And that's, if we have those components, we don't need yet all of the fancy machine learning, data scientist techniques to make predictions. We can actually get there with just that gut feel that we've been talking about. Think if you've seen sales over time and it's rising every day. It's easy to make a prediction that tomorrow it will rise again. And same thing if it's falling. I've often implemented forecast models and seeing the look on end users' faces as they realize it's not as valuable as they thought it would be, to know that tomorrow their number is exactly what they expected it to be. When you get to this prediction phase with your data, if you stay focused, if you have nailed down your descriptive and your discovery phases, then you know exactly what it is you want to predict, and you know the behavior of the past events of that statistic or that metric. And now it's time to make your prediction. If you're looking at your data every day, you can make those predictions just by looking at it. You can look at it and you can just say, okay, take one more step forward, two more steps forward. What becomes important is how rare it should be that you are looking at that predictive phase. If you want to make value, or if you want to find that value in prediction, then be very intentful about what it is you're predicting and know the decision that you're going to make based off of the prediction that you have. So to go back to our campaign investment, we want to look at our sales over time. We want to look at how much we've spent over time on campaigns. And we want to look at, when I've spent a lot, has my sales increased? When I didn't spend a lot, did my sales decrease? If those behaviors hold true, then it becomes a time of, all right, put more sales in. Did that have the effect that or put more marketing spend? Did that have the effect that I wanted? Yes, it did. Okay, put even more marketing spend. Did that still have the effect? Yes, it did. Okay, even more. And it's this continual cyclical pattern that we see that draws the value from the prediction phase. When a year and a half ago, I was with a company and we were building a product, and we started to test out this predict, verify, and act. And we grew from 20 million a year to 1 billion in less than 3 months. It was a phenomenal growth rate. It was unreal, and it was based on the predictive phase and the focus that we had around our audience and as they became a customer, and how we could control that with the metrics that we had at our disposal. The last phase is the decision phase, and it's one that can boost your business tenfold, but it's also something that should be approached with caution. The decision phase of analytics, you've heard as machine learning or artificial intelligence or deep learning. But if you take the computer out of that, it really is a human process, and that decision is made by a human. And in the early phases, when you're just doing descriptive statistics, when you're just looking at reports, your decision phase is being handled by a person, by an executive that's likely asked for the data and gotten the answer. And now they're going to make a decision based off of what that data has been telling them. What we see in machine learning is that they've done that so many times over and over and over again that they have a clear focus that it's valuable and that it can be done by a machine. And that's when there becomes that objective of building out automation and data and products within your organization that are for just this phase alone. But what I usually see is an organic growth into this through something that's tried and true in the just the descriptive and discovery phase. An example of this would be if you are selling an item online and someone put that item into their shopping cart, there's usually a pop-up of additional items that you could also put into your shopping cart that are similar to this one, or that other people have also bought that you might be interested in adding. And that is called a recommendation. But to get to that recommendation, it's not like you started out and said, I want to develop a machine learning algorithm that does recommendations for this specific area. Usually what happens is you've looked at a report every day of your products and which other products have sold with those. And you have a good understanding, and you can manually build a report and manage that. And then you start to say, okay, well, I want to automate this. I want this to be done for me without my intervention. And that pipeline is what becomes the automated decision phase that you get into, but it's really born out of the solid foundation of a good descriptive and diagnostic phase. I have this slide and then a Q&A slide. I wanted to take the opportunity for those that are on this call and want to say, what is it I can do to better use data? I want you to know that you have data, you are data, and the data that you have, we can give it to you. Right here is what you're looking at is Mazuma. They have data and they're an accounting platform. And if you're on their accounting platform, then the financial transactions that are collected are organized into a dimension called transaction type. There is a dimension for time, and your metrics are transactions and credits. This is a dashboard that shows your transactions over time, your transactions by type, and your metrics, and it has filters. This will get you through to the discovery phase for the financial transactions that you have and can continue to propel you into an analytical maturity lifecycle. Any questions? Anonymous attendee, is warehousing expensive? No, actually, it's never been cheaper. The warehousing today is mostly usage-based. What you'll be paying for is how much data you would need to store at a single time and how often you're accessing that data. If you are not adding more data that you're storing and you're not accessing it at all, it will cost you $0. And if you have an organization of 10 people that access it every single day and you have millions of rows, it's still like a couple $100. It's not an astronomical cost. It used to be, but it's a lot cheaper today. Let's see, another one, anonymous. What tool do I need to learn if I haven't built dashboards or reports before? Oh, that's a really good question, especially since a lot of people on this call have mentioned that they, haven't really grasped or wrangled all the data within their organization. The number one tool to learn right off the bat is Excel. Excel and pivot tables. If it's free and widely used across every organization, if you can get comfortable in there, every data tool after that is a flavor or version or spin-off of Excel and its pivot table functionality. I will say a plug-in for what you want after you've had Excel, because once you've had Excel, you get a little frustrated that you want something better. A lot of people will look to two competing visualization technologies. One is called Looker, it's owned by Google, and another one is called Tableau, and it's owned by Salesforce. Let's see, how would you recommend keeping track of services in the describe phase? Ooh, so that's a good question. Now, the services that you offer, they themselves are a dimension, right? If you have 30 different services that you offer, each one of those is a service. And then as you offer those to customers, let's say you have 10 different customers, then the combination of a customer and the services that they have, that's another level of granularity. So you're able to say, you know, you might have 5 rows all with the same customer and 5 different services. That would be that customer has 5 services. And then you would have another customer and it might have 4 rows because it has 4 services. And so that's kind of how you would play with the measurement of your services and how it relates to your customer. And of course, you would have metrics on the cost of those services and, you know, every day, which like you'd have a date field for the daily offering of those services. That's just me kind of architecting on the fly there. I think that is all of our questions. I've got time for a couple more, but if no one has any. Okay. Once again, I'm the founder of Analytics Odyssey. We are a data consulting company. We're happy to help manage and look into where you can go to power your business with data. Please get in touch with me. I'm grateful for this experience and the time that you've taken, and I hope you guys have a good finish to your day.